NBC Connect Live. I'm John Fazio with NBC Basketball Camps, and I'm excited to introduce our guest for today. Mike Wells has been in the broadcast media field for the last 20 years. He's covered teams such as the Minnesota Timberwolves, the Indiana Pacers, the Minnesota Vikings, and since 2013, he has been a part of ESPN covering the Indianapolis Colts. He graduated from Central Washington University many a year ago, and I will talk a little bit more about that. But Mike, thanks for joining us today.
Oh, man, John, it's good to catch up with you, man. I mean, the last time I saw you, you didn't have any facial hair on you. You definitely didn't have any gray down there, which shows you that you and I are definitely getting up there in age, man. It's been 20 plus years, but I'm definitely glad to be able to catch up with you again.
Yeah, thank you. And if it's okay, I'm going to take us down memory lane a little bit to kind of give our audience a little backstory. I for some reason, I never forget, it's 1997. We are in a small dorm room in Bardo Hall, and on the TV, a VHS player is playing the 1996 NBA Finals, Seattle Sonics versus the Chicago Bulls, and you and I are practicing our play-by-play and color analysis because you had the great idea that, hey, the men's basketball team has their games all broadcasted on the radio, but the women don't. So let's go follow them. Let's cover their games. And for 2 seasons, we did that, which was one of the highlights of my college time. And we both had dreams of getting into broadcast media. Here you are 20 years later working for ESPN. So congratulations. You've already had a pretty successful career.
Oh, man, those were great times. I mean, you think about it, John. Being in those small college towns, NAIA schools, Division II towns, and staying in like Holiday Inns, and you and I, acting like we are, Dick Vitale and Marv Albert out there on the broadcast, holding the microphone sticks. But I mean, it's been great, and it's been a great run, on the media side. We always had those dreams of what's going to come about. You always had that secondary passion about coaching and teaching and everything. And it seems like you're doing very well with that out there in Spokane.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Hey, it's pretty cool. You get the inside look at professional athletics. Can you tell us kind of what you enjoy most about covering pro sports, and then also maybe something that's challenging about that?
You know what? My goal was always to play in the NBA. I have not grown 1 inch since I was in 7th grade, 12 years old. So 29 years ago, I was 6'2", wearing a size 12 shoe, thinking, all right, I'm going to be 6'5", 6'6", be able to handle the basketball. And in those 29 years, the only thing that has grown on me is my waistline. So that was it. The whole NBA aspirations went down the tube. And people always say, what made you want to be a sports reporter? And I say it's the second best thing behind actually playing the sport. Obviously, you don't make the millions of dollars that professional athletes make, but you're right there in the locker room. You're talking to players. You're talking to coaches. I mean, the stories you're able to gather. I'm watching Larry Bird, a Hall of Famer, in khakis and a sports coach shoot jumpers like he's in the NBA three-point contest and walking off the court after 5 straight swishes saying this is too easy, way too easy. And those are things you never forget about. I mean, covering teams that reach the conference finals, but the thing about, the biggest thing with professional athletes though, John, is that they've made it. They're at the top. They're playing, in the professional ranks, and from a media standpoint, they don't always need us. There are some athletes who do not enjoy talking to the media. They're saying their job is to come in, practice, play hard, and listen to the coaches. They don't want to take the time to talk to the media. That part of it is challenging, especially when you're required to write a story or, do a television hit. But all in all, I would probably say 95% of professional athletes and coaches are great guys. There's always a bad apple in everything that you do. But all in all, I mean, it's definitely, a dream. This has been a dream come true of mine.
Yeah, that's great. What's something that, I love sports. I'll watch whatever sport. I love playing sports. But what's something that the common sports fan like myself would be maybe surprised to learn about happens at the pro ranks, or what that dynamic is like there?
How many players are humble? I mean, I'll sit there and, the older I've gotten, when I first started, I was in my 20s, when guys just first got in the league, we had a lot of things in common, whether it was, whether I was still playing video games or wanting to hang out, things like that. But the older I got, once I got in my 30s, talking to people my age, I'll use David West, power forward, played for the Pacers, played with Chris Paul with the Hornets down in New Orleans when they were the Hornets still. Him and I, we would sit in the locker room and just talk about our families, our kids, and things like that, or what our favorite restaurants are on the road. Just how humble and just low key these athletes can be. Those are the type of people I enjoy talking to. I'm not sure how many people remember Austin Crozier, played with the Pacers, power forward. Him and I, once he retired, him and I became very good friends. He spends part of the year in California, but he spends the summers here in Indiana, and him and I go golfing every summer. And we just talk, and I don't look at him as, a former NBA player. I look at him as a husband, as a father, who's in the same age as you and I, and we just talk about life. And so not everybody, it's not all about the flash and the bling and things what we see on social media. A lot of athletes are down to earth. It's more the older ones once they've been in the NBA or in the NFL. Another person that I like to say people probably wouldn't guess, Andrew Luck. I know he's retired now. He is the smartest athlete that I've ever talked to. I mean, he's got a Stanford, degree. And I had one player tell me that, if you didn't realize Andrew Luck was an incredible football player, you would think that he invented Microsoft. That's how smart of a person he is. So I enjoy talking to people, not about sports, the athletes that I cover. Obviously, we have a job to do where we have to interview them, but I enjoy just, getting the backstory about them, what they like to do away from the football field or the basketball court. Those are some of the best stories or best conversations I've had with athletes or even coaches.
That's great. One thing I really admired about you, having known you quite a few years back and sharing some of the same dreams, is that you've been able to really go after that and find success. You come from a tiny Ellensburg, Washington education at Central Washington University, and here you are on the big stage with ESPN. What do you think has helped you find success in what could be a really cutthroat business?
It's funny, John. So I take pride coming from Central Washington University. Living here in the Midwest, for the past 20 years, when I first stopped in Minnesota, now here in Indianapolis, people always say, "Where's Central Washington University at?" And I have a license plate holder that says Central Washington on it, Wildcats. And of course, people here don't know about it, so I have to explain it. And a background of mine is I enjoy the education system. I've done a lot of guest speaking. I've had an opportunity to teach a sports reporting and a writing class at Indiana University. And obviously, Indiana University has an incredible media school. A lot of great people have come from there, and people ask my backstory. And they're like, "Well, how did you get to ESPN?" I tell them, you know what? When I was in college, I did everything imaginable. You remember Newswatch phase? Newswatch. I mean, we've already discussed, being in the radio booth. All this stuff is really panned out for me, being versatile and everything. And I'll tell them, I'm like, hey, when I got out, I looked at myself as a goldfish trying to swim in the Pacific Ocean, because you have those heavyweight journalism schools like Northwestern, Missouri, Syracuse, Columbia, so many great universities that have turned out some of the best in the business. So we were at a disadvantage trying to move up the ladder, but I believe that I was going to outwork everybody out there. Did I get every job I applied for? No, but hard work finally paid off for me, once I got that call from ESPN in August of 2013.
Yeah, that's so great. I love that idea of just, number one, embracing the opportunity for the education, but then also working your tail off to set yourself apart and be really unique in what you do. That's awesome. Now, hey, you're a dad with kids, and I think you said your kids are involved in sports. How does being around professionals every day, how does that impact your view of athletics as it relates to your own kids and maybe their future goals?
What I found interesting is, being in this business for 20 years, I know the odds of, reaching the professional ranks are, probably even smaller than this. Getting a Division I scholarship is probably smaller than this also. So when I attend my kids' sporting events, I'm just a dad. I sit in the stands. I cheer both teams. I cheer on both teams, especially when I coach. I've coached both of my kids' basketball teams, when they were younger, and let a kid from the other team make a great move. He runs by me, I'm high-fiving him, man. I'm saying, good shot, good move there. And one thing I found very interesting sitting in the stands is that, a lot of parents look at it as, all right, my kid is going to be the next LeBron James or, whatever, the next, Drew Brees or whatever, or Patrick Mahomes. And I'm just like, all right, there's a chance. Everybody's got a chance, but you also got to be realistic about it and, just enjoy the game. Enjoy the game and be the spectator. I mean, you know me, John. I like to talk. I like to talk and joke and have fun. But if you were to ever see me sitting in the stands outside of cheering on and just being focused and watching the entire sporting event, I'm pretty quiet because that's my time to get away and enjoy that. And so from a parenting standpoint, I know, I mean, my son loves basketball and soccer, but listen, unless he's going to go on a growth spurt and, spend a lot of time in the gym and take his game to another level, hey, just get a college education. I'll be happy about that. I know realistically the odds are very slim for both of my kids to do something, but so that's probably the biggest difference. I'm Mr. Dad, or as I say, I'm a Uber dad minus the minivan, driving my kids to practices and things like that. I just have fun with it and I enjoy it, and that's definitely my lighter side of things.
Well, I can't talk. I do have the minivan because I know
I'm gonna need a picture of that. You got to send me a picture. You rolling around in the minivan with the rest of the Fazios.
Definitely true. Hey, you've covered a lot of high-level teams and probably stories over the year. Are there one or two stories that stick out in your mind as like, wow, that really, I'll never forget covering that?
I've had several in my mind. Some haven't been very pleasant, and then I've had some that it's like, man, this is a top level type deal. And I'll start on the downside. I'll never forget. I had been 2 months graduated from Central. I graduated in December '99, and my first job was the Associated Press in Seattle, and I was working news side. And I'll never forget, I was driving down I-5, heading down to Tukwila to my apartment, and I get a call from my boss saying, hey, don't you live by the airport? I was like, yeah. They're like, there was an Alaska airline flight coming back from either Cabo or Puerto Vallarta to Seattle, and it crashed in the Pacific Ocean. And they believe there's no survivors. And, I'm 2 months out of college, 22 years old. And this is, obviously pre 9/11 where you're able to get inside security. And I'm trying to talk to families about, potentially losing loved ones. And I'm having to ask them about that. And I was sworn at, I was yelled at. And I get it, because if I was that, family member and a reporter stuck a microphone and a tape recorder in my face, I would have been the exact same way. I'm like, get away from me. So it was kind of an eye-opening experience. It also told me that, you know what, I got to grind it out on the news side for now, but please, I want to get back to sports. And so that was probably one of the ones I also dealt with. I don't know how many people remember Korey Stringer, the former Minnesota Viking offensive lineman. He died from heat exhaustion in 2001. And so I dealt with death again on that situation. But crazy story about that is that team featured Dante Culpepper, Chris Carter, Randy Moss, 2 of the 3 who were Hall of Famers, and they had reached the NFC Championship game the previous year. Korey Stringer on a 90-man roster was the only person that ever called me by my name. So I kind of developed a relationship with him because he actually respected me, and it would actually call me Mike and just not, hey, reporter and things like that. So that hit kind of hard to me that, a guy that, I had a great relationship with, died after he coming off of his first Pro Bowl appearance and had a young kid. So that hit home. But on the flip side, I joke, I've covered 7 teams that have reached the conference finals, whether it's, the ALCS with the Minnesota Twins, the Minnesota Wild hockey team who got to the Western Conference Finals, and then, NBA teams that have reached the Eastern Conference Finals or the Western Conference Finals. And I have yet to cover a team that has gotten to the finals or the Super Bowl. I am 0 for 7 in that category. And I'm like, listen, in this business, you never root for a team. But, one of these days I would love to cover it. You say I covered a team that reached the Super Bowl or the NBA Finals just to say I did it. But number 1 on my list, John, I picked up the hobby of golf, and I wish I wouldn't have waited until I got into the late 30s to start playing golf. But 2 years ago, there was a PGA event in Columbus, Ohio, which is about 3 hours from Indianapolis. And they said, hey, Peyton Manning and Tiger Woods are paired together in the Pro-Am. And we would love to get a story from Peyton Manning about Andrew Luck. Would you go? And I'm thinking I'm going to have to wade through the whole 18 holes before it's done. No, I got an opportunity. I was inside of the ropes, and I was walking down the middle of the fairway, standing, 5 feet behind Tiger Woods as he's lining up for his shot on a par 5. Standing right there, Tiger Woods. I don't care if you're good in golf or bad in golf. It's Tiger Woods, arguably the greatest golfer of our time. And I'm standing right there, or I'm talking to Peyton Manning, and I say, "Hey, Peyton, afterwards, are you going to be, doing media session?" He goes, "No, Mike. Walk with me right down the middle of the fairway. I've signed autographs on on the first 17 holes, and so, I'm going to take a break, and I'll talk to you now." And I'm walking down as the fans are yelling, "Peyton, Peyton, Peyton!" And I'm talking to Peyton Manning in the middle of a fairway, next to Tiger Woods. I mean, I don't get giddy over anything because, once you've been doing it long enough, it's like whatever. But I'm like, Tiger Woods and Peyton Manning. I'm doing it in the pro-am, and I stuck around the whole weekend covering that event and just going to the driving range, watching Dustin Johnson, Justin Thomas, all these guys hit golf balls from the driving range. And I'm dreaming that, hey, God, I wish I could be within 100 yards of these guys out here. So, I mean, that is probably number 2 on my bucket list of things that I've had an opportunity to cover. So I've been very blessed and very fortunate to do things that I never, ever thought I would be able to do in this career.
That's awesome. And hey, as we kind of wrap up here, Mike, just kind of thinking outside of the sports world, our country has experienced a lot of turmoil in the past few weeks. And I just kind of wanted to get your thoughts and feelings, maybe your advice to people as we've been kind of wrestling with the issues of racial equality and how that's impacted our country. Do you have some thoughts you can share on that?
I've had a lot of people reach out to me and ask about, what I think about everything, or have I ever dealt with racism? I grew up as a military kid. Prior to moving to Indiana in 2005, I had never lived anywhere longer than 6 years of my life. For the first almost 28 years of my life, every couple of years I moved around. I lived in Germany, I lived in California, Washington State, on and stuff. So everywhere I lived, there was diversity. And I've been very fortunate and haven't had to deal with racism, but I've had friends who have dealt with it. And it's very sad because I feel like as more and more continues to come out, I feel like more and more racism gets involved and people are using social media as a platform. And I've always been, colorblind because, I look at you the same as I look at myself. I look at other races as I look at myself. It's the same. And it's unfortunate that there are people out there. We know it's not everybody, but there are people out there who they view things with just one color. And living in Minneapolis where George Floyd, was killed at, I knew that area. I used to hang out in that area when I was in my early 20s when I lived there. And it stinks, to put it, pretty bluntly, that it stinks that it has gotten to that people, feel like they have to use their power or their race to try to take advantage of people. And you got to hope that, as we get through, this COVID pandemic and this race issues, that there's going to be light at the end of the tunnel on the other side. When is that going to happen? I don't think anybody knows, but hopefully it'll happen sooner than later.
Good message, Mike. Hey, this has been a real joy for me to catch up with you and hear some of your stories.
Oh, yeah.
And really inspiring too, to just, again, to having known you back in the 90s and saying, hey, this is where I want to go with my life. And then to see just your hard work and your experience and persistence to go and tackle those things and be where you're at today. It's a really neat story.
I don't want to get too personal, but I do have to give a shout out to some people close to you. And I'll never forget summer of 1999, the Fazio household let me stay there so I can go to a convention in Seattle and spend some time out there in Federal Way at the household. Your parents were very gracious because I was interning at the Associated Press in Spokane, where you live at now. And I drove across for a week-long convention, and your parents were very nice to let me stay in their house. And I would drive up to Seattle, and that's where I met the only time I ever met the late Stuart Scott. And I remember telling him, "Hey, Stuart, I'm going to work at ESPN one of these days." And I'm sure he might have been thinking, "Hey, I've heard people say that a bunch of times." And once I got to ESPN, I wanted to meet him, and so I can tell him that we had met, 14 years prior. Unfortunately, we didn't get that opportunity. But you know what? I'm not sure, where I'd be at had your parents not given me an opportunity to stay, rent free for a week. And I think I might have slept in your bedroom when I was out there too, John, and hang out with the entire family and go to dinner and stuff like that. So, definitely much respect to the entire Fazio household for giving me that opportunity 21 years ago.
Well, you make a great impact on people. My dad still brings up that story of how much he enjoyed having you in their home for a week. So kudos to you. You've got the gift of really helping people feel like $1 million, and it's obviously paid great dividends for you over the years. Mike, thanks for being with us today, and wish you all the best moving forward. Appreciate your time.
All right, John, you take care and say hello to the family for me.
Will do.